Hey guys, hi everyone. Welcome back to Ambr Talks. Today is episode 43. I'm so excited to be in the 40s of my episodes. And I have a really interesting guest with me today. His name is Erick. And Erick is someone that I met on Instagram, actually. This is another guest that I've met through Instagram, which shows you that, Instagram is not all that bad. You can actually make really interesting connections on the gram. And how, it came about was, I don't know, we just started exchanging DMs. I think he was like looking at my content and then I got on his page and I was like, oh, like this is very interesting. His page being it's called Divine Soul Sanctum. And I mean, I don't want to spoil it, so I'm gonna let Erick explain more. But yeah, all that to say, welcome Erick to my podcast. Thank you for connecting on Instagram. I appreciate you, and I'm excited to see where this is going to go. So, on that note, could you please tell us a bit more about you, about the page, about the content that you're putting out, and also perhaps like what like resonated in my content, sorry, that made you, reach out.
Right, absolutely. First of all, Crystal, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here, and that. So, as far as myself, just to first of all give you a quick background about myself. I'm actually a childhood brain aneurysm survivor. And then that led to, of course, that happened when I was like 8 years old, 8 years old. I was on my birthday, so my 8th birthday,
Wow.
in a coma, I should say. So that led to a lot of childhood bullying. So I was, throughout my life, just dealt with a lot of childhood bullying, and that formed a shame identity in me because it kind of instilled in me that. Um, the trauma that I went through is something to be ashamed of. But I didn't realize that until many years later. It was actually around like 2017 that I realized that. And so I decided I needed to do the deep work in order
Mm.
to heal. And so I actually went through, kind of like it was a coaching program. I got my coaching certification, but this coaching program, the guy who led it, I called him. He's no longer here in San Diego, but people would ask me like to describe him and that. I said, well, he's kind of like the Tony Robbins of San Diego. So
Okay.
yeah, so and he had all these events to shift your mindset and all that. So I went through all those, and I was able to release a lot of the shame, a lot of the low vibration emotions, and that. But after I got my coaching certification, I immediately didn't really do anything with it. I really didn't feel that call, but then over time, I was like, you know what? I saw a lot of trauma out there, and just a lot of people dealing with these different low vibration emotions. Um, and so I decided I need to do something about it. I can't just let it go on, and that. So did a lot of meditation, and I came up with these 12 pillars to help people to release these emotions, to help them converge, I say, with their authentic self so that they could step into their higher purpose. So yeah, that's a little bit about what I do. And as far as the content on my page, um, that's really like, as you've commented, as I've said, I really want the feminine. It really elevates the feminine is the feel I want in my language, in the coloring, in everything. I really do a lot of research and as far as, well, does this appeal to the feminine? Does it elevate the feminine in that? Because I really believe that as a society on a whole, that there's a suppression of feminine energy in the universe, and that's a lot, unfortunately, in men. Is that
Hmm.
they've suppressed this, on a universal level, suppressed this feminine energy, and the suppression of this feminine energy is what has given rise to the patriarchy. So it's really about, I believe, restoring that feminine energy, and just the whole thing about like boys don't cry, man up, all these things. That's led to, over the years, the centuries, that's led, unfortunately, to this, that suppression on one side and that rise of the patriarchy on one side, on the other side. So really my work is about helping on the individual level, helping people to release those low vibration emotions. On the macro level, it's about helping to restore that balance, to raise the feminine energy, in the universe, and in that. So yeah.
Wow, thank you. I love that. There's so many directions in which I want to go in right now, but I think before we dive deep, right? Let's go back to basics, because maybe some people listening, like, they're not too familiar, with like low vibration emotions or energies, or like feminine, masculine energies, because I know that these terms are often misinterpreted, and people think that, oh, just because we're talking about energy or vibrations, it's like, we're in the woo woo category, right? Whereas in reality, it's very science based, especially in 2025. Like, there's so much factual information now about all of this stuff. So um, in your eyes, or at least through your lens, like, first of all, what are lower vibrational, let's say, emotions or energies or feelings, or all of that? And then could you also unpack what are feminine and masculine energies, like, from your lens? Because obviously people know me as, I talk about that all the time on Instagram, but I want to hear actually from you.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So low vibration emotions, those would be the emotions like shame, guilt, low self-esteem, even rage, things like that. I prefer not to use the word negative or negative emotions, because I feel like our emotions are part of us. When we call our emotions, like if you say I'm having a negative emotion or a bad emotion, whatever, I think you're really subconsciously, and this is just from my lens once again, you're judging yourself in that. But if you say low vibration, I think that's less judgmental. And also, our emotions, all of them have a purpose. And those low vibration emotions, like the shame and all that, they're really, they're guideposts, and that pointing us to, like, hey, I have this in my life, so I need to go here. I need to, do whatever to, release these low vibration emotions. And I use a lot of different language, like, I softer language. I don't say break these. I say release, 'cause you just have to, it's like if you look at these as relationships, like, you just like, you get to that point in a relationship where being in that relationship no longer serves you. So you kind of just walk away. You're just like, I'm done with this. I don't want any more part of this. I'm walking away. That's the same thing with our emotions, is you can't force it out of you. You can't force yourself to not feel shame, not feel the low self-esteem, whatever. You just have to choose, like, to walk away, to say, you know what, I'm going to do the deep work. I'm going to walk away from this. I'm not going to be this type of person anymore. And it's not something that happens overnight. You can't just decide, like, 1 minute, like, I'm not going to be like, whatever. And that it's a process, but yeah, so it's just about releasing those low vibration emotions. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
It was just, and thank you for that. That was very well, beautifully put, easily to understand. And the second question was, like, feminine, masculine energy is like, how would you define that, from your perspective, also, and also your journey and what you've learned, in simple terms also, how would you define feminine, masculine energy?
So there are universal laws. One of the universal laws is there's feminine, masculine energy in everything, and that. So um, women are, the most part, they're better containers of the feminine energy, and men more of the masculine. We need both to create that balance in the universe. So how I define, I don't really have like one, like a laid out definition of either, but feminine energy is about flow. It's
Mm,
about just like, I guess just whatever that flow is, like dancing. It can be dancing, it can be, different things like that. Whereas masculine energy is about, just doing, is about
mhm,
building, is about um, getting the job done, I guess you could say. So that's really where I believe the balance is that um, when the man uh, builds, like, I guess the vision, you could sort of say, um, he creates that environment in which the feminine, the woman, is able to flow,
mhm,
and that can manifest itself in different ways. And that's why I love, like, when I see like these power couples, like I think of Grant and Elena Cardone.
mhm,
They're just like, they're in their flow. He's building, she's flowing, and
mhm,
and
mhm,
all of that. So yeah. But I was actually in a room. I don't know if people know the app Clubhouse, but I was actually in a room where um, Grant Cardone, I don't really use anymore, but he would drop into these different rooms. It's a voice app, and the moderator of, or one of the hosts of this room, just took the opportunity and said, "Hey, Grant, who's the boss? You're Elena." And I loved his answer. He said, "You know what? We both stay in our lanes. She's the
mm.
boss in certain areas. I'm the boss in other areas, and
Wow.
we don't cross. We respect each other." And I love that.
Yeah.
It's about like, the building and the flowing. Yeah, allowing them to go together. So yeah,
Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful. I love that. And I love Grant Cardone. And another example for me of like these sort of like power couples is actually Tony Robbins and his wife, Sage Robbins, you know. I've been following Tony for a while now, but I hadn't really known much about Sage and what she does. But actually, after having gone to many of their seminars and conferences now, like when they speak about masculine feminine energies, because they talk a lot about that, especially when they speak about relationships and stuff like that. It is fascinating, and you can also see it in their dynamic itself. Like he is, I mean, he's this big, like
yeah,
this big block, and and he's there, and his way of coaching and everything is very like very masculine energy, right? It's like forward driven, it's expansive, it's like straight to the point. It's, of course, he holds space because he's also an expert in human behavior and everything, but he's very just like, okay, do. And then you have Sage, who's so like in flow. She's softer. She's, like really that more gentle, nurturing, caring side. And you really see that in the dynamic. And that's something that I really love about them. And just to add on to, these definitions of masculine and feminine energies, how I've been sort of like defining them, or at least for people who have a more, let's say, rational approach to things, is that they can actually be seen as, psychological or character traits, right? Because a few of the masculine energy traits, it's like what, it's driven, it's ambitious, it's in the doing, it's action, it's grounded, it's discipline, it's structure, it's that um I always like to see it as like a tree, and it's the trunk and it's also the root, right? And then feminine energy or feminine character traits, or the psychological traits of the feminine, is more like nurturing, caring, inward, creative, intuitive, and yeah, that sort of like softer approach. And that would be the leaves and the branches that flow with the wind and stuff like that. But the masculine is always grounded, not always, but you get my point. And
yeah,
one thing that I feel like people really need to understand, and because I've been getting a lot of comments also on social media, is that like this is regardless of gender, right? Whether you're an actual man or a woman in society, or all the other um I forgive me if I don't have the right words nowadays, but all the other people that don't consider themselves a woman or a man, like
right,
in all people, what I'm trying to say is that there are these masculine and feminine energies, and it's regardless of gender.
yeah,
And what I've noticed, at least in the few years that I've been like deep diving into all of this is that the more one is connected to these energies, the more is, if not connected is maybe not the right word, but just aware, right? The more one is aware of like what's actually going on within, the more you start seeing what's going on without, like in the out, in the external world. And it's like, if there is something that is not aligned, to use that word, in the external, in my world, let's say in my work or my relationships or whatever, it's, maybe it's time to actually look inwards and see, okay, what is going on inside that's manifesting in reality like that.
Right.
And my approach is balancing the masculine and the feminine energies, because my journey also in all of this has been fluctuating from like hyper masculine energy. Like I was in this very like toxic, unhealthy, hyper masculine energy. And then because of also of my a past identity I had, which was extremely extreme, I then fluctuated to hyper feminine, where I was just like, let the reins go, completely flow with the universe, like don't give a fuck about anything. I was just like, like really just flowing, but like not in a healthy way. And then
Right.
now finally I feel like, wow, I'm coming to some sort of like equilibrium, like, the pendulum is not swinging as extreme, polarities. Now it's like a bit more in between. But my take on this is that it's never going to be 50-50,
Right.
because we don't live in a perfect like world, and it wouldn't be fun if that was the case, right? So it's like we're always either like a 60-40 or a 70-30 of like masculine and feminine energies. But the most important is like living coherently and in alignment with these energies, and knowing also when to dance between them, right? Like, for example, at work, when I'm doing work stuff, I'm definitely going to be more in my masculine, right? But then perhaps when I'm with my friends, if I'm with my girlfriends and, we're going for brunch or whatever, then yeah, I can just totally be in my feminine. Um,
Right.
yeah, does that resonate? Does that make sense?
Yeah. 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 It does. It completely does. And I think um, d- you talked about balancing between your masculine and your feminine and
Hmm.
all that. I live in San Diego, California, on the west coast of the U.S. So, there's a big surf culture here.
Hmm.
When men and women go out to surf, they know that it's not going to be just an even ride. They're going to have to go with the tides and the waves and all that. And that's the same thing, with balancing our masculine and feminine energy. And also, but you mentioned like getting into your masculine, and that's another thing to do with the suppression of the feminine energy. Is I believe that unfortunately so many women, because they don't feel safe, because of that trauma, and that they don't feel safe, or maybe the man in their life is just not manning up, where the
Hmm.
woman has to take on that, the masculine role. I
Hmm.
remember a friend of mine, a female friend of mine, one time, she said, and I've heard this from a lot of women. She said, "You know what? I want the man to be the man. I want the man to lead. I want them, but if he's not going to, I'm going to step up and I'm going
Hmm.
to, do whatever." So yeah, that goes along, with the suppression of the feminine energy in the universe. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's about maintaining that balance, within each of us, in
Hmm.
order to raise that vibration, that feminine energy, I should say, within the universe, and to restore that balance. It has to be
Hmm.
on, first of all, on the individual level, and that is restoring that balance in each person.
100%.
Mhm.
And it's actually really interesting we're talking about this, and this is just coming to me right now as we're talking. But I wrote down yesterday, I think, or I can't remember, 2 days ago, I was running, and I had like this insight where I was like, oh, I feel like I need to create content around like the relationship I had with my dad and how it actually mm, propelled me into hypermasculine energy.
Yeah.
And now that I'm speaking to you, and that, we kind of touched upon trauma, I mean, we haven't gone into it yet, but I actually realized that, um, so long story short, when I was 9, my parents got divorced. And that same year, in 2004, I survived the tsunami that happened in Asia with my father.
Oh, wow.
So it was like that same year, I had like this double, back-to-back
Yeah.
trauma, PTSD, and all that. And obviously, I mean, this has been a lifetime of recovering, right? Because what came after that was like I went into addictions, drugs, alcohol, all of that stuff because of all this unhealed trauma. But now, finally I've been unpacking that for the past, I don't know, like what, 10 years now. And anyways, what I'm trying to say is that in that event, right, the tsunami, which was obviously something, you know, bigger, it's a natural catastrophe, right? This shows you also the force of Mother Nature, which we can talk about the feminine energy and Mother Nature after. But it's like I was there with my father, right? My father, who was supposed to be like the number one protector, the number one like provider and everything. So as a 9-year-old, my little brain, first of all, was hurt by the divorce and not understanding like, oh my God, my dad's leaving. Like,
Yeah.
that already was like, okay, protector provider left. But obviously I didn't think like that, right? At 9, like this is in hindsight what my brain probably understood subconsciously. And then a few months later after the divorce, like I'm in this tsunami with my father. And of course he, protected us in every way, shape and form he could. And I always say this, like he I mean, he didn't have to like literally physically protect me, but he did the best he could in that space. And because he was someone of let's say influence, and I speak in the past because he's dead now. Sorry, that was a bit harsh. He's transcended.
Yeah.
He he was able to get us out the next day after the tsunami. He was able to get us on a plane and back to Singapore at the time I was living. So, but where I'm getting at is that 10 years later, I find myself in rehab in Thailand for the drugs and alcohol. And my therapist at the time, I'll always remember this, she said that, how my brain probably interpreted the tsunami at the time was that my number one protector wasn't able to protect me. Not because he wasn't able to, he did, but because, I'm 9 at the time, I don't understand anything about life, right? And I must have gotten so scared, so traumatized. And because my dad was there, I associated him as like the protector, the provider, not being able to actually keep me safe in that context. And so that, took me down this path of like addictions, and like obviously my relationship with men has just been completely just, I don't even know what the word would be, but hasn't been healthy at all. And then getting sober was one thing, which was, I went to rehab, as I was saying, I got sober. And then, life is really interesting sometimes how things work out. But basically, I was in rehab for 3 months, and then I get kicked out of rehab. And a week after getting kicked out of rehab, my dad died unexpectedly.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was like, I'm like learning all this stuff to like heal all this stuff around my dad. And then I get sober, and then he dies. So I was like, okay, like this is a great challenge, because like, how am I actually going to do this now that he's not here? Like, how am I going to talk? Like, So then my whole 20s has kind of been on that topic. But why I'm giving so much context and talking about all this is because I'm curious, like the trauma that you went through when you were 8, 9, and everything that ensued from that. Like, were you able to, is there, first of all, a link with, masculine, feminine energies, or with the fact that you went down this path of like embracing your authentic self, of like being interested in, the feminine energies, the collective, and like bringing that, forth? Or like, what is the bridge? What is the link, if there is one, for you?
So if I understand your question, I guess to summarize, it's just in my healing journey from experiencing that brain aneurysm, surviving that brain aneurysm today. How have I kind of navigated my masculine, feminine energy?
Yeah, and if there is a link, because for me there was a link, but like, was it the same for you?
My My father was he was a commercial airline pilot, so I
Okay.
was primarily maybe not 100% of the time, but I would say a lot of the time throughout my childhood, um, it was it felt like a single parent household.
Mm,
Even though my parents, they're still together today. Um, and that because I was primarily raised by my mother. My dad would be gone for weeks, sometimes months at a time if he was doing training in that. Um, I really I was raised a lot by that feminine energy. I, I have brothers, but they have a different mother, so they were raised, in different state, far away. So I
mhm,
was raised with my sister, so I had a lot of that feminine energy in my life, and that's how I guess I learned to navigate my childhood, cope with the pain of the childhood bullying, and that is, if I got scared or whatever, or if I had a bad day, my mom would give me the hug and all that.
mhm,
So I was really raised with that. So that's really what I internalized is, if you want to feel safe, it's about getting that hug and all that.
mhm,
So whereas my dad, as I said, my parents were still married today and that, but my dad, he was just like that. When he came home from a long trip, it was like just let him sit in his chair and read his newspaper and all that.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
so I didn't really have that communication, that connection with my father. We have better communication now. It's still not as good as I would like, but I enjoy it. I embrace it for what it is, and that. So, but oops, I'm sorry about that. So I
mhm.
don't know if
Don't
you heard
worry.
the other side. But anyways, so I really, as far as that connection on the masculine side, I really didn't have that so much growing up. But I had, what I did have is I had father figures.
Mm,
Is I learned early on that, and it just so happened that whenever there was a father son thing, at my school or whatever, or, my, uh, I was raised religious. So if there was something father son thing at church, it always so happened fell on when my father was out of town. So I always had these father figures in
mhm,
my life. And a lot of those father figures, they're the ones who really taught me. I had one of those men, he took me to a garage one time. A buddy of his owned was a mechanic, and he owned a garage. So he took me to the garage, and he's like, "You're gonna learn how to change your oil." So
yeah.
so that's a lot where I learned that masculine stuff and all of that. But it's been self navigating, I guess, for me. But I embrace it as best as I can, and I'm not afraid to get within my feminine. But I also am not afraid to get within my masculine. And so it's been an interesting journey for me as far as embracing this both and the healing journey and whatnot.
Mm. And where you're at right now, like
Yeah.
how do you feel in terms of, yeah, the energies within you, like how, yeah, like tell me a bit about like just how's your relationship with these energies, let's put it that way.
That's an interesting question. I would say that I'm learning more to embrace my feminine energy through such things as somatic dance and
Hmm.
things like that. I don't have them. I forgot to bring them with me. If you see one of the doors behind me, the is actually to my bathroom, my restroom, and that I have um products in there that would be considered more feminine. Like I have uh um the exfoliating gloves and the creams and all that I use and all that.
Hmm.
So I do things like that to embrace my feminine, get in. I guess you could say get in touch with your feminine side
Hmm.
and all that. But for me, I came to a point where going and doing these manly, masculine things and all that, I just I didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to, like, I get involved with these men's groups that they would go camping and they do the different, like, the axe throwing and, the tug of war and all that. And I'd just be like, I'd do it because everybody else was doing it. But I didn't want to,
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, you know what, it's time to embrace who I am. And
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have to do all those things and still to prove that you're a man. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel that's what it was like. And going back to when I was in high school, I was like the guy who I'd be sitting at the table with all the girls, or the
Mm-hmm.
boys sitting
Mm-hmm.
at the table with all the girls, because that's who I enjoy being around. And
Mm-hmm.
even today I make better friends with women. And so, yeah, I think as far as now embracing my feminine energy, it's number one. I think it's about those practices like the somatic dance, or even using those face creams that might be considered more feminine. That, and just even looking in the mirror and saying you're beautiful, and
Mm-hmm.
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then but at the same time saying, none of this makes me any less of a man. you know,
Mm-hmm.
Putting exfoliating and having the exfoliating gloves in my bathroom doesn't make me any less of a man. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not wearing one now, but wearing a pink shirt doesn't make me any less of a man. Somatic dance doesn't make me any less of a man.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Mm-hmm. Wow, I love that. I love that. That's and here we're creating the bridge between the 12 pillars and more of your content. But I think it's so beautiful because this is also a sort of semi-conclusion I've reached, where it's like, yeah, harmonizing, balancing your masculine, feminine energies at the end of the day is about authenticity, right?
yeah, yeah,
Because also for me, for example, on my journey of like um, reconnecting or balancing out my energies, it's like, yes, I'm a woman, and like, of course, I love skincare and like, nails and all of that, sure, but like, I'm not into makeup right
right,
now. I used to be, don't get me wrong, I used to be like really into like a lot of makeup and doing all these different looks. And now I'm not into that. And, part of me that was a bit like going, when I was getting off makeup, I was like, okay, whatever. At the time I was backpacking and whatever. So I was like, this is just a new identity. And now that I'm like more embodied and like, yeah, back in my like feeling more embodied in my energies, I'm just like, well, actually it's just not working for me right now. Like I just don't want to be wearing like a lot of makeup. Like, okay, I'll do a bit of my eyebrows and put some mascara on maybe, but like, it's just because I don't wear makeup per se doesn't make me less of a woman, right?
yeah,
Or like
exactly,
even if I didn't do my nails, it wouldn't make me less of a woman. Or if I didn't, whatever. And it's just at the end of the day, yeah, it's really just being your most authentic self, which from what I understand is also just being embodied in your masculine and your feminine energies.
right,
And whoever judges you based on that, it actually says more about them where
yeah,
they're on in their journey than about you, right?
right, yeah,
And this is where, yeah, this is why also like I'm the first one to say that authenticity, like the fastest way to step into your feminine energy
hmm,
is to be as authentic as possible. Whether you're a man or a woman, doesn't matter. It's just
absolutely,
be yourself. Be who you want to be and be proud in that. Do you know what I mean? Like, look, I'm wearing this like hoodie, right? Because it's cold as fuck here in Spain. I don't understand why it's so cold in the south of Spain, but and sure, it's not maybe the most feminine thing to wear, but like I know me, I know my person, I know like, my womanhood. Like I
yeah.
don't need external appearances, or I don't care also what people think about my truth, because I know who I am within. And I think that that will radiate automatically when you're truly being authentic.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, yeah. I definitely love it. And you had, I can't remember uh, how you put it. It was something about what was it that you said? Just about oh, I think it was is about like um, you talked about how in order to be your authentic self, you need to, both men and women need to step into their feminine energy. And I think that's so true. Because the masculine energy is more I guess like task oriented or vision oriented and all of that. Like I need to, build this vision, do this and all that. I guess you could even say protector, provider oriented. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, allowing the feminine to flow, and, allowing the feminine to flow, not just in women, but also in men.
Yes.
And, and that doesn't mean like the woman getting into her masculine so the man can flow, but
Mm-hmm.
it's, the masculine, the man saying, you know what, uh, and I think that goes with purpose, is I'm going to like do this, and that I create content, I do different things, because I get into my masculine, so then I can get into my feminine, so that I
Mm-hmm.
can enjoy, my life, and just go with my flow, and not have to feel like I'm do all the time. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And also just piggybacking on that, I do also think that we're at I don't know if crossroads is the right word, but we're definitely at like a new page kind of in humanity, because there's not a lot of people that think like us, right? That are on this wavelength of like, okay, embodying your masculine and feminine, that even know about these
Yeah.
energies, right? And this is definitely like, I mean, this has been going on. I mean, this is ancient knowledge and ancient wisdom that has been with us years and years ago, but now it's all coming back up.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really curious, like, in the sort of like advancement and progression of humanity, and if we want to talk about collective awakening and ascension process and all of this stuff, like where, like how and when, like are people truly going to step into, they're actually just their authentic selves at the end of the day, because sooner or later I feel like it's going to happen. Everyone's going to sort of have this, or hopefully have, these I don't know if the word awakening is the right word, but like come to remembering who they really are, and like understanding that, okay, this masculine energy and masculine feminine energy topic is actually quite pertinent, and stepping into more wholesome relationships with oneself.
Right.
So I don't know where I was going with this. I just wanted to put that out.
No, I love it. I think and I've seen on a lot of your content in that you talk about um uh uh like quantum, like the quantum field and all that. And I'm really into that. I do a lot of research as far as quantum jumping and different things like that. Uh and uh, it's it's the whole idea of like quantum physics and all of that, everything around quantum, it's newer, but it's all scientifically based. You just have
Hmm.
to, like, I guess, look under the physical surface, so to say, and all of that. Like for example, um, I I have a lot of like really lucid dreams,
Wow.
and I had a dream the other night that I found a lost dog, and I looked on this dog's tag, and it had a word on it, and the only like I only remember like the letter N, but it was like about 15 characters long, so I
Okay.
can't remember the whole word, but I started researching, and this is good. Like Chat GPT, it doesn't like give you like a list of articles. It just like outlines the answer for you. So
Hmm.
I went to Chat GPT and I asked him, I'm like, I had a dream last night with this, and I kind of described my dream, and I said, what is a letter within quantum mechanics that starts with an N and is about 15 letters long, or 15 characters long, and it listed like all these words. So I looked them up and I found this one word um, called neuroquantology. And
Okay.
neuroquantology, I started researching. I'm like, oh crap, neuroquantology is the science behind my 12 pillars.
No way.
I'm like, it's like I'm like, because I have received the way I came up with my 12 pillars is I just had like a vision, a download, like one day in meditation that like I just heard this voice like and just like tell me these are the 12 pillars to emotional
What?
and that was like a little less than a year ago. I'm like, okay, so I started like I wrote down these 12 pillars and all that, and then like a year later I have this dream with this dog in it, like in this word, and I only remember the end, but it's about 15 characters long, and I look it up. I'm like, oh my gosh, neuroquantology, that's like the science behind like you know behind each of the 12 pillars. And so that's really how the quantum field works, is it's just kind of like part of it is like that manifestation and all of that. So, and I don't know how, just kind of like talking, I love it. But yeah, I think somehow that went along with what you were saying, and that.
Wow. No, but this is fascinating. I mean, like I'm like really passionate about like all things, quantum and oh my God, that like that dream, what you just described is like that's powerful,
Yeah.
And there's so many there's two questions I want to ask you. Um, okay. The first one is, within that dream, because, then okay, you woke up and you had the insight, I guess, to check on ChatGPT and like further explore it. But long story short, I used to be a therapist before, and I dive a lot into dream analysis. I find it fascinating, and so I'm just wondering, like, one, what does the dog represent to you, if anything? And two, you said it was specifically 15 character long.
It was about, I couldn't remember exactly, but I estimated like from it was a longer word, so I estimated about 15 characters long. So, and that's what I gave the prompt I gave to ChatGPT, is I said it was about 15 characters long. Um,
Okay,
but yeah, return like some words that were like maybe 16 or 14 characters. Yeah.
sure. But like, because 15 was the first thing that came to your mind. So like,
Yeah.
dog and 15 in numerology, like, do those things mean anything to you?
Not so much the 15. The dog is in a dream is more about depending on what kind of dog, more about loyalty and
Mm-hmm.
that. If it's like a more aggressive dog, like I've had dreams about pit bulls, and that's more about security and that. So I think I think it's not so much about. I think it's more about the tag with the word being on the dog,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and the dog being loyalty. The dog was white, so white is purity, and
Mm,
and all that. So I think the tag, the word being on the tag on the dog, was more. I think for me, I would take that more as, and I found the lost dog. Is I think
mm-hmm.
I would take that more as, and there's so many like little things about the dream. Like I picked the dog up and I held it, and then I looked at the name, the tag on the dog. So I think it's more about embracing. Where I picked the dog up, I embraced, become loyal to, this what is named in that these 12 pillars. The word that was on the dog, that I have to embrace these 12 pillars,
Yeah.
uh, you know, not only to teach them in my own life, but I need to embrace them
Mm-hmm.
in my own life and everything that I do, so that I can, and maybe even teach is because it's not like book learning. It's like I think it's more about like showing people, is like, here are the 12 pillars. Here's the first pillar. The first pillar, is about core values. I can't tell
Mm-hmm.
you what your core values are.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have to decide. I can be a guide in that. I can say, well, for example, you talk about your father, and you went through that tsunami when you were a kid. As
Mm-hmm.
how did you feel? How did that make you feel when you went through a kid? You said it didn't make you feel, you didn't feel safe. You didn't feel protected, and all that. As far as your father, he was doing the best he could, and he did what he could do, and that. But maybe one of your core values is just safety, or making people feel safe, making people feel seen,
Mhm.
and all that. So, maybe that would go to communication and
Mhm.
all of that. So yeah, so I think the dream, the dog, was more about me embracing what I've been called to be loyal to,
Mhm.
within myself, and then at the same time, helping people in their own healing journeys to also embrace these 12 pillars of
Mhm.
emotional healing.
Mhm. Wow. Yeah, no, for sure. Like my brain is going in all directions, but it's also because I'm like really into I believe in the power of numbers also, and also behind the number 12, it's so significant, right? Like the 12 apostles, there's the 12 steps in 12 step fellowships, like there's the 12, there's 12 months, there's 12 everything. So I mean, there's no coincidence that also when you had the download of the 12 pillars, it was 12. It wasn't 10, it wasn't 11, it was 12, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And um, would it be too much to ask you to walk us through those 12 pillars?
Okay. Yeah, sure. I'm just gonna, and this goes to, just so I get the wording down correctly, uh, here. The first one, as I said, is more about, uh, your core values. Is,
Hmm.
that's the core values is a compass, really, for each person. Um, I have my core values, my 12 core values, and so that's really about, living in alignment. Just saying, um, uh, what's important to me. What type of person am I? Who do I want to be? And all of that. And I love. Can't remember the name of the book right now. Brendan Bouchard, in one of his books, he talks about, just before you go into a meeting and all of that. He talks about, just get to the meeting early, like 15 minutes early, and sit in your car and, just meditate on who you want to be. How do you want
Hmm.
to show up in that meeting? And that goes with your core values. So then, uh, the second pillar, it's really, about, integrity,
Hmm.
and, just, aligning yourself, saying, okay, these are my 12 pillars, and showing up being being a person of integrity, and having integrity in your life. And then the third pillar, that's really about boundaries, and that goes externally and internally. As far as externally, it's really about, the relationships. Is, just saying, this person, just they don't respect my boundaries.
Hmm.
And, and I tell people, what, set up healthy boundaries, but don't build walls. And,
Mm.
I think, all too often, people can, maybe, uh, they can cut off relationships, where a
Hmm.
simple conversation, um, could have saved that relationship. And unfortunately for myself, I have relatives that, they've chosen to cut me off, not because
Hmm.
of anything I've done to them, but because of other relatives. And there's a lot of dynamics in my family, that needs healing, but because they don't want communication with other certain relatives, and they've concluded that having a relationship with me will lead to,
Hmm.
uh, and so it's like, well, if you had just, like, communicated your boundaries with me, we could still have a good relationship today.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I have to respect, like, that's just where they're at. They don't want
Yeah.
a relationship with me right now. I have to respect that. Um, but also internally, it's about the respecting those boundaries. Like, who am I? What's the essence, the essence of my core being, and all of that. And it's saying, like, it's like, if you're a person who's dealt with, addictions, or had addictions, it's saying, you know what, I'm not the type of person who does this. I'm not the type of person who drinks. I'm not the type of person who does narcotics, drugs, and all of that. And just deciding that these are my boundaries. I'm not going to
Mhm.
go here. I'm not going to go out to the bar with my friends because I know there's going to be alcohol. So I'm just going to stay home and watch Netflix. So
Mhm.
then, just to quickly go through the rest, Pillar 5 is really about releasing those limiting emotions. And I skipped Pillar 4. That's really about embracing. Pillar 4 is about embracing the softness of self-compassion.
Mhm.
The first three pillars are really about the more of the releasing and all that, and then pillar 4 is embracing, self-compassion. Pillar 5, that's releasing limiting emotions to harmonize with your desired reality. Pillar 6 is about embracing the expansive perspectives, releasing the limiting beliefs. And then pillar 7, nurturing yourself first,
Mhm.
and that so you can serve from a place of authenticity. And then 8, that's about embodying excellence. And I like that. As I said, I use a lot of different language. So embodying is just like not becoming excellent, but really embodying and really embracing it, and that it is a part of you. And then 9 is awakening to your inner awareness to transcend conditioning. And I think this goes back to what you were talking about, is that global awakening. When is that going to happen? And I think everybody needs to, it goes back to Plato's cave. If you're familiar with that, is, it's just about waking one person up and waking, people up separately, and all that is, as we awake one, then, it's kind of like domino effect.
Mhm.
And then 10, that's about aligning with the frequencies of love, those higher vibration frequencies, love, peace, abundance, as a path to receptivity. Um, then 11 is about discovering your essence, your divine essence. It's about who you are, the divinity within you, and then allowing that divinity to shine, out of you. And then 12 is, that's about awakening to your magnetic presence. That 12
Mm.
the 12th pillar, that's the one everybody wants to get to. That's the law of attraction, the an abundance mindset and all of that. But I always like, uh an abundant mindset is not just about money. And people,
Yes.
when they want to get, like, I want abundance now, I want a yacht, I want, $1 million and all that. The thing that people have to realize is, when you're just focusing on the money, um that's external validation, and that
Yes.
actually repels the abundance, is
Yes.
because you're looking at something else. You're looking at external validation, um, to feel your worth, and that, that acts to repel the abundance. Whereas if you feel, the law of abundance is about, the purpose, the joy, embracing those things, and embracing an abundant mindset, and all that. And once you embrace within yourself that abundance, then, you're going to manifest it in your life. But you can't do it the opposite way. You can't say, like, you can get $1 million, but you're going to lose that $1 million,
Yes.
and that, or it's going to, like, just lead to other, I guess you could say, addictions or whatever in your life. So yeah, so that's really and the first three are really about, like, building, like, who you are and all that, and then from there it's like becoming, like, and I like the word converging with your authentic self.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow. Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, what's also coming to me right now is that, there's no coincidence, once again, that the 12th pillar, like, it takes 11 of them before to get to, that stage of, and it, like you said, it's not even about money, but like, and this is something I also just want to reiterate to people, is that this abundance mindset that we hear a lot about, it's how to unpack it super simply. It's basically feeling, from what I understand, I might be wrong, it's basically feeling so content, so grateful, so whole, with
Right.
what one has in this present moment right now, whatever your situation, whatever the context, whatever the environment, it's like being able to feel really full inside.
Mm-hmm.
And then automatically from that space of feeling full and whole and one, whatever, let's just say money as an example, is going to be a byproduct of that feeling that you feel inside. And it's obviously easier said than done, right? Because like, sure, I mean, my journey also with this whole scarcity abundance mindset and like manifesting money and all this stuff, it's like, it's been very interesting because
Yeah.
I noticed that like many times in my manifestations I would literally be writing down like sums of money that I wanted.
Mm.
And I thought that that was what you were supposed to do because, like, also, certain people that you hear online or whatever, they say, no, you have to have a number, you have to keep the vision. Da, 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 da. Where I'm at now is that I'm realizing that me chasing money or like if I keep on wanting to manifest money or I'm like so focused on money, 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 money,
Yeah.
it's like that's not going to get it to come to me, first of all. And second of all, I got it all wrong. If I'm where I'm at and I'm focusing solely on money, I literally like got it all wrong. And
Yeah.
it's just also this interesting balance because of course we're also in the 3D world. We need money to, for the bills and whatever not, but it's
Right.
all about focus and intention from what I understand and where I'm at least now in my life. It's like, okay, if I'm like just like getting obsessed about money and how I need it to survive and that's going to repel it even more. But if I fully trust, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, saying that like, okay, what can I be grateful for today? Like, yeah, it's raining outside, it's cold, I'm not feeling my best, but oh my God, I'm so grateful that I don't have to be outside, that I can stay in, I can be on a podcast with a beautiful soul that I've just met, I'm grateful for tea that I get to drink. I'm grateful for like all of these little simple things and like truly feel it, not just say it, because this is also something with gratitude that I've, I, I want to pass on to people is that, you can do all the gratitude lists you want. But if you don't actually feel it within the depth of your heart, there's no point doing a gratitude list. Like
It's
gratitude is an attitude that you have to feel, you have to step into. It's not just like, okay, like I'm going to do a list and that's it. And I say this because I used to be that type of person. Like I used to be in 12-step programs before and they would say, oh, do a gratitude list every day. So I would do a fucking gratitude list every day, but just, to as a checklist, just to get it off the list. But it's like I wasn't feeling, the true gratitude.
right.
I'm like going off topic right now, I think. But but yeah, anyway, so back to like the whole I mean, honestly, this can be another podcast in itself, the whole abundance mindset thing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
all
no, and I love what you said about like you can say it over and over again. You can say these affirmations over and over again, but you can say I'm abundant, I'm a millionaire, uh, but if you don't feel it, it's like all these affirmations really don't like amount to anything, really don't do anything. And that's really the process. These 12 pillars is before you can get to that place of abundance, that abundant mindset. First of all, you have to have the core values.
mm-hmm.
Is you have to build that foundation that and that you have to become this certain type of person you have to embrace and all that. It goes to when you're like when a foreman, when a construction company, people, they build a building, they don't build the roof first. You
Mm-hmm.
have to lay the foundation. That's really
Exactly.
what the 12 pillars is about, is like, the releasing, the building, the becoming, and all that. So yeah, to get to that place of abundance. So yeah.
Exactly. And just tying in the parallel with like 12 steps. Are you familiar with the 12 steps of like AA, NA, and all of that stuff?
Not. I mean, I know a few of them. I know like what one of them is, going and reaching out, forgiving other, or asking for forgiveness, and then like something about the a creator or whatever in that. But I'm
Yeah.
familiar with them. So yeah.
Well, it's just what I'm trying to say is that it's basically it's the same thing. Like the 12th step is, carry the message basically to other alcoholics. Like that is the 12th step is like, okay, you go through all the steps to get to that final one where you can actually carry the message and be, I'm not going to say the messenger, but be the one who has gone through a journey and that can now help others, right? And the first step is just acceptance. It's like
Right.
you're not asked for anything else. It's just accepting. And yes, there's a step on like making amends to people that have harmed. Like honestly, the 12 steps are really, really interesting. And
Yeah.
I believe that it should be a process that people who are into personal development should just look at. It has nothing to do with drugs and alcohol. If you look at the 12 steps and you just take them for what they are in terms of personal development, it's fascinating. Like take away the alcohol part, it's really fascinating. But what I'm saying is that it's a progression. It's an ascension, an elevation. Like you have to go through certain things to get to a certain point, exactly like in your 12 pillars. And I feel like it's actually the same in life, and I'm saying this as a naive 30-year-old, but I feel like there are just some things, for example, that at 20 you just don't know, at 30 you just don't know, at 40 you just don't know, if you just don't know. And it's in my opinion accepting also just that these are stages of life, and that you unlock certain um, keys or certain levels the more you go through life. And maybe it has nothing to do with age per se, but at least it's life experience and yeah, evolution, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, yeah, it does. I love it. Yeah, just that progression and all that is, we all learn from different experiences, and different, you've learned from, your parents' divorce, going through the tsunami, your father's death. I've learned from, the brain aneurysm, so all of our journeys are different and
Hmm.
all that. So yeah, I definitely love it.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm just being mindful of the time, and I wanted to ask you, like, yeah, is there anything else you'd like to bring forth or share or ask, or like, any last golden nuggets that you'd like to share before we wrap things up?
I would say, I would say just to anyone listening, whatever, and my 12 pillars, like anyone, it's geared a lot to trauma survivors, but trauma can be different to different people. You've gone through your trauma, I've gone through my trauma. Maybe someone else, their trauma might not be something like a tsunami or a brain aneurysm or something like that. It may just be something like, I know that even growing up poor can be traumatic
Hmm.
to like a person,
Of
and that.
course.
So, I guess my last word would be, whatever that trauma is I think
Hmm.
as a society, as a people, so many people they've rather than doing the deep work to heal from that trauma, they've normalized that trauma.
Mm.
Um,
Wow.
and unfortunately, the normalization of that trauma, because different types of people have, who have gone through this different trauma, they've kind of like, I've seen within society that they've formed groups,
Hmm.
you know, um, and these groups, they lead to a lot of what we see here, especially like in the US and maybe elsewhere in the world, is they lead to these groups that maybe don't express their like whatever in the healthiest ways, and that.
Hmm.
So I would say to those people is, rather than anyone going through any type of trauma, or who has experienced trauma, is, rather than finding a group where you're able to live in your trauma without healing, and just finding a group, and that, um, I would say, do the deep work.
Mm.
Step away from that group that allows you to live in that trauma without going through the deep work. Step away from that group, or those groups, and really like, do the deep work. whether it's going through my 12 pillars, whether it's joining, an AA or whatever, is do the deep work, because you don't need to live with these low vibration emotions. Is I think each one of us needs to take responsibility for ourselves, and once we do, that's really the pathway to healing.
Wow, that's so insightful. Actually, that's so good, because I hadn't really thought of that. That yeah, nowadays there's a lot of this like normalizing of trauma, and um, actually, I would take it one step further and ask.
Mhm.
I think that one of the questions that people should be asking themselves is like, is your surrounding, is your environment helping you heal from that trauma, or is it keeping you, or is it that normal, or is it normalizing basically your trauma? And you know um this is a little bit of a sensitive topic, but I have stepped away from the 12-step programs
Yeah.
because they have served me, don't get me wrong, saved my life, saved my entire life, and very grateful for the program, for the steps, for the meetings, the people and everything. But how am I supposed to truly step into my new identity and truly move forward and truly thrive if I'm staying in these environments where, I'm not saying they normalize trauma, but there's still a lot of sick people. There's still a lot of, the fear-based methodology of like, oh, if you leave this group, you're gonna relapse and die.
Right.
And it's like, well, I just got off drugs and alcohol. I don't want to be dependent off anything else, especially not a group. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? For my own like healing. And so I've taken a step, away from all of these, because it's like I don't want to stay in these environments that, okay, yeah, I got, I didn't get sick in them. I got better, but now I feel like I'm okay to move on, and I don't want to be in this fear of like relapsing just because I don't go to a meeting.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, to anyone who's listening, it's also like, just check your environment, check the people around you. Is your environment currently, or the places that you're going to, is it really helping you step into the new identity that you want to be embodying, or is it keeping you in a similar one or in a past one? And on that note, if people listening, they want to know more about you, the 12 pillars, all of this, like, how can they find you?
Well, my website is divinesoulsanctum.com. My Instagram, that's at Divine Soul Sanctum. Pretty, as far as other social media, I have other social media. I have a Facebook group, and a lot of these, they're smaller, but getting them to grow and all that. But I would say I'm most active on Instagram. I have a Patreon page. I have a YouTube, and speaking of YouTube, it's just at Divine Soul Sanctum is my YouTube page. There are a lot of, and I'm also into like sound therapy, like solfeggio, binaural beats, and all that. People will find like a lot of like hundreds of different videos on there. So yeah, but my website is probably the best way to kind of connect and find everything else.
Okay, perfect. So I will link it under the episode on Spotify, like the all your links. Okay.
Okay.
And so on that note, well, that just leaves me to thank you for your time, energy, wisdom, and presence.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone also who's been listening to this podcast. And yeah, stay tuned for more episodes on Ambr Talks.